in the House Republican caucus, Kevin McCarthy answers to these QAnon members of Congress, not the other way around. And that is something that, frankly, needs to be said. He said he was going to pull Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene aside after, her comments to Parkland activists and comments saying that Muslim Americans should not fully and freely serve in the House, that they must be forced to swear on a Bible, et cetera. But I've seen Kevin McCarthy pull someone aside before for a talking to. And that representative that I last saw him do that to was Representative Ted Yoho of Florida. And what Kevin McCarthy did was that he pulled him aside to essentially excuse his behavior, to allow it and to abet it. And actually, Kevin McCarthy's lack of holding his own caucus accountable is one major reason why I went to the floor last year to hold Yoho accountable myself. And so when I hear that Representative McCarthy is going to pull a member aside who has made white supremacist sympathizing comments, the thing that I think is, what is he going to tell them? Keep it up? Because there are no consequences in the Republican caucus for violence. There's no consequences for racism, no consequences for misogyny, no consequences for insurrection. And no consequences means that they condone it. It means that that silence is acceptance, and they want it because they know that it is a core animating political energy for them. And this is extremely dangerous, an extremely dangerous threshold that we have crossed, because we are now away from acting out of fealty to their president that they had in the Oval Office. And now we are talking about fealty to white supremacist organizations as a political tool. And for, Republicans that are in that caucus that are unwilling to hold that accountable or to distance themselves from it, we really, really need to ask ourselves what they are evolving into. Yeah. Because this is no longer about a party of limited government. This is about something much more nefarious.
The idea that the right had ever referred to AOC as extreme when they have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene in their ranks goes to show just how distorted their view of reality truly is. This speech by AOC came in the aftermath of a discovery that Greene had expressed support for killing Democrats in 2018 and 2019. She, quote, repeatedly indicated support for executing prominent Democratic politicians, not to mention openly supporting QAnon, a far-right conspiracy theory that a secret cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibals are running a global child sex trafficking ring and plotting against Donald Trump. And whereas Republican Steve King was stripped of his committee assignments after defending white nationalism in 2019, what did Republicans do with the controversy surrounding Marjorie Taylor Greene? They gave her a coveted spot on the House Education Committee, despite having called a number of school shootings false flag operations. That's who Republicans put on a committee overseeing education, a woman who mocked the killing of little kids at Sandy Hook and teenagers at Parkland. And so while the GOP tries to grandstand and pretend that she's some outlier, the fact is that they're embracing her and their actions prove it. As for Greene taking responsibility for her past comments, and you may not believe this, but she presented herself as the victim here. I know. Shocking. She tweeted, quote, "Fake news CNN is writing yet another hit piece on me focused on my time before running for political office. Over the years, I've had teams of people manage my pages. Many posts have been liked, many posts have been shared. Some did not represent my views, especially the ones that CNN is about to spread across the internet. They're taking old Facebook posts from random users to try and cancel me and silence my voice. CNN hasn't once tried to cancel a Democrat, even those who called for violence while in office. Here's the truth. The Democrats and their spokesmen in the fake news media will stop at nothing to defeat conservative Republicans. They are coming after me because I'm a threat to their goal of socialism. They are coming after me because they know that I represent the people, not the politicians. They're coming after me because, like President Trump, I will always defend our values. They want to take me out because I represent you, and they absolutely hate it. Prepare for the smears, prepare for the attacks. I will never back down to the enemy of the American people, and neither should you." In other words, she's complaining that CNN reported on her own posts on her own page, and yet somehow the problem here is the news. Somehow by broadcasting her own behavior online, She's the victim. And so Republicans like Greene will hide behind their idea of being censored or silenced or canceled, and yet they never manage to defend themselves on the merits. There's never any acknowledgement of why she's garnering attention, like how she called for the execution of Democrats or mocked kids who just watched their classmates get murdered. No, instead it's just whining that she's being held to account for her own behavior and her own words. Remember when the GOP referred to itself as the party of personal responsibility? Yeah, good times. So if you thought that the lunacy would end with Donald Trump, not a chance. The rot in the GOP goes far deeper than just members of the previous administration, because not only are mini Trumps now seated in Congress, but even the so-called establishment figures are rewarding them with committee assignments. Kevin McCarthy might pretend that he's going to give her a stern talking to, but the guy is the epitome of impotence. This is someone who would sort out Trump's favorite Starburst flavors and deliver them to him to curry favor. McCarthy is not a leader, he is a doormat, and everyone in both parties is well aware. The simple fact is that the very presence of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress poses a danger to other lawmakers, especially people like AOC, whom the right villainizes on a relentless basis. And with Republicans repeatedly attempting to bring guns onto the floor of Congress or bypass metal detectors, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that those on the left fear for their lives. Because again, this isn't some arbitrary, baseless concern. These people have literally called for the killings of those who are now their colleagues. Not a single person watching this right now would walk into a job where someone had just posted online that their now coworkers should be killed. So why should Democrats in Congress? And so with this in mind, Democratic Representative Jimmy Gomez has introduced a resolution seeking to expel Marjorie Taylor Greene from the House of Representatives. His resolution reads, quote, "As if it weren't enough to amplify conspiracy theories that the September 11th attacks were an inside job and the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School was staged, a string of recent media reports has now confirmed that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene had previously supported social media posts calling for political violence against the Speaker of the House, members of Congress, and former President Barack Obama. Such advocacy for extremism and sedition not only demands her immediate expulsion from Congress, but it also merits strong and clear condemnation from all of her Republican colleagues, including House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Her very presence in office represents a direct threat against the elected officials and staff who serve our government, and it is with their safety in mind, as well as the security of institutions and public servants across the country, that I call on my House colleagues to support my resolution to immediately remove Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from this legislative body." And so, knowing the threat that she poses to members on the left, Republicans will have no one to blame but themselves if and when we see more violence at the hands of those who've already broadcast their true feelings. If Republicans were even pretending to be pro-life, they'd have already taken action. And yet, just like everything else, that's just one more platitude they hide behind that sounds better on paper than it does in practice. While you're here, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I take a deep dive into the top stories of the week, and I also interview major players in the world of politics, like Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Pete Buttigieg, Katie Porter, Al Franken, Cory Booker, Jamie Harrison, Mary Trump, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.